So Yitzhak called Yaakov, and after blessing him, charged him, "You are not to choose a wife from the Hittite women. Go now to the home of Bethuel, your mother's father, and choose a wife there from the daughters of Lavan, your mother's brother. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fruitful, and increase your descendants until you become a whole assembly of peoples. And may he give you the blessing which he gave Abraham and your descendants with you, so that you will possess the land you will travel through, the land God gave to Abraham." So Yitzhak sent Yaakov away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Lavan, son of Bethuel, the Arami, the brother of Yivkah, Yaakov, and Esau's mother. Now Esau saw that Yitzhak had blessed Yaakov, and sent him away to Padan Aram to choose a wife from there, and that he blessed him. He charged him, "You are not to choose a Canaanite woman as your wife," and that Yaakov had listened to his father and mother and gone to Padan Aram. Esau also saw that the Canaanite women did not please Yitzhak his father. So Esau went to Ishmael and took, in addition to the wives he already had, Milchat, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nevoyet, to be his wife. Yaakov went out from Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed the night there, because the sun had set. He took a stone from the place, put it under his head, and lay down there to sleep. He dreamt that there before him was a ladder resting on the ground, and its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of Adonai were going up and down on it. Then suddenly Adonai was standing there next to him, and he said, "I am Adonai, the God of Abraham, your grandfather, and the God of Yitzhak. The land of which you are lying, I will give you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of dust on the earth. You will expand to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. By you and your descendants all the families of the earth will be blessed. Look, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go. I will bring you back into this land, because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised you." Yaakov awoke from his sleep and said, "Truly, Adonai is in this place, and I didn't know it." Then he became afraid and said, "This place is fearsome. This has to be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Yaakov got up early in the morning, took a stone he had put under his head, set it up as a standing stone, poured olive oil on it, and named the place Beit El, house of God. But the town had originally been called Luz. Yaakov took this vow: "If God will be with me and will guard me on this road that I'm traveling, giving me bread to eat and clothes to wear, so I will return to my father's house in peace, then Adonai will be my God. And this stone, which I have set up on it as a standing stone, will be God's house, and everything you give me I will faithfully return 1/10 to you." Continuing his journey, Yaakov came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in a field, and there were 3 flocks of sheep lying there next to it, because they were watering the sheep from that well. The stone of the well's mouth was large, and only when all the flocks had gathered there would they roll the stone away from the opening of the well and water the sheep. Then they would put the stone back in its place on the well's opening. Yaakov said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" They answered, "We're from Haran." He answered them, "Do you know Lavan, the grandson of Nahor?" They said, "We do." He asked them, "Are things going well with him?" "Yes," they answered. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." He said, "Look, there's plenty of daylight left, and it isn't time to bring the animals home. So water the sheep, then go, put them out to pasture." They answered, "We can't, not until all the flocks have been gathered together and they rolled a stone away from the opening of the well. That's where we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with his father's sheep, because she took care of them. When Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Yaakov went up and rolled the stone away from the opening of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Yaakov kissed Rachel and wept aloud. Yaakov told Rachel that he was his father's relative and that he was Rivkah's son. And she ran and told her father. When Laban heard the news of Yaakov, his sister's son, had ran to meet him, hugged him, and kissed him, and brought him to the house. Yaakov told Laban all that had happened. Laban said to him, "You are indeed my own flesh and blood." After Yaakov had stayed with him a whole month, Laban said to him, "Why should you work for me for nothing, just because you are my relative? Tell me, how much should I pay you?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was good-looking with beautiful features. Yaakov had fallen in love with Rachel and said, "I will work for you for 7 years in exchange for Rachel, your younger daughter." Laban answered, "Better that I give her to you than to someone else. Stay with me." So Yaakov worked 7 years for Rachel, and it seemed only a few days to him, because he was so much in love with her. Yaakov said to Laban, Give me my wife, since my time is finished, so that I can start living with her." Laban gathered all the men of the place and gave a banquet. In the evening, he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Yaakov, and he went in and slept with her. Laban also gave his slave girl Zilpah to his daughter Leah as slave girl. In the morning, Yaakov saw that he was with Leah, and he said to Laban, "What kind of thing is this that you have done to me? Didn't I work for Rachel? Why have you deceived me?" Laban answered, "In our place, this isn't how things are done, to give the younger daughter before the firstborn. Finish the marriage week of this one, and we'll give you the other one also in exchange for the work you will do for me during yet another 7 years." Yaakov agreed to this, so he finished her week, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as wife. Laban also gave to his daughter Rachel his slave girl Bilhah as her slave girl. So not only did Yaakov go in and sleep with Rachel, but he also loved Rachel more than Leah. Then he served Laban another 7 years. Adonai saw that Leah was unloved, so he made her fertile, while Rachel remained childless. Leah conceived and gave birth to a son, whom she named Reuben, see a son. For she said, "It is because Adonai has seen how humiliated I have been, but now my husband will love me." She conceived again, gave birth to a son, and said, "It is because Adonai has heard that I am unloved. Therefore he has given me this son also." So she named him Shimon, hearing. Once more she conceived and had a son, and said, "Now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I born him 3 sons." Therefore she named him Levi, joining. She conceived yet again, had a son, and said, "This time I will praise Adonai." Therefore she named him Yehudah, Judah, praise. Then she stopped having children. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing children for Yaakov, she envied her sister and said to Yaakov, "Give me children or I will die." This made Yaakov angry at Rachel. He answered, "Am I in God's place? He's the one who is denying you children." She said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go, sleep with her, and let her give birth to a child that will be laid on my knees, so that through her I too can build a family." So he gave him Bilhah, her slave girl, as his wife, and Yaakov went in and slept with her. Bilhah conceived and bore Yaakov a son. Rachel said, "God has judged in my favor. Indeed, he has heard me and given me a son." Therefore she called him Dan, he judged. Bilhah, Rachel's slave girl, conceived again and bore Yaakov a second son. Rachel said, I have wrestled mightily with my sister and won, and called his name Naphtali, my wrestling. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took Zilpah, her slave girl, and gave her to Yaakov as his wife. Zilpah, Leah's slave girl, bore Yaakov a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come," calling him Gad, good fortune. Zilpah, Leah's slave girl, bore Yaakov a second son, and Leah said, "How happy am I! Women will say, I am happy," and called him Asher, happy. During the wheat harvest season, Reuben went out and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please, give me some of your son's mandrakes, so that I can be fertile." She answered, "Isn't it enough that you have taken away my husband? Do you have to take my son's mandrakes too?" Rachel said, "Very well. In exchange for your son's mandrakes, sleep with him tonight." When Yaakov came in from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You have to come sleep with me, because I've hired you with my son's mandrakes." So Yaakov slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Yaakov a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my hire, because I gave my slave girl to my husband." So she called him Yisachar, hire, reward. Leah conceived again and bore a sixth son to Yaakov. Leah said, "God has given me a wonderful gift. How at last my husband will live with me, since I have borne him six sons." And she called him Zebulun, living together. After this, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah, controversy over rights. Then God took note of Rachel, heeded her prayer, and made her fertile. She conceived and had a son and said, "God has taken away my disgrace." She called him Joseph, may he add, saying, "May Adonai add to me another son." After Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Yaakov said to Laban, "Send me on my way, so I can return to my own people, my own place, to my own country. Let me take my wives for whom I have served you, and my children, and let me go. You know very well how faithfully I have served you." Laban answered him, "If you regard me favorably, then please listen. I have observed the signs that Adonai has blessed me on account of you. Name your wages," he said, "I will pay them." Yaakov replied, "You know how faithfully I have served you, and how your livestock have prospered under my care. The few you had before I came have increased substantially. Adonai has blessed you wherever I went. But now, when I will provide for my own household." Laban said, "What should I give you?" "Nothing," answered Yaakov. "Just do this one thing for me. Once more, I will pasture your flock and take care of it. I will also go through the flock and pick out every speckled, spotted, and brown sheep, and every speckled or spotted goat. These and their offspring will be my wages, and I will let my integrity stand as witness against me in the future. When you come to look over the animals constituting my wages, every goat that isn't speckled or spotted and every sheep that isn't brown will count as stolen by me." Laban replied, "As you have said, so be it." That day Laban removed the male goats that were streaked or spotted, or all the female goats that were speckled or spotted, every one with white on it, and all the brown sheep, turned them over to his sons, and put 3 days' distance between himself and Yaakov. Yaakov fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Yaakov took fresh-cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees, and made white streaks on them by peeling off the bark. Then he set the rods he had peeled upright in the watering troughs, so that the animals would see them when they came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the animals mated in sight of the rods, and gave birth to streaked, speckled, and spotted young. Yaakov divided the lambs, and had the animals mate with the streaked and the brown in the flock of Laban. He also kept his own livestock separate, and did not have them mix with Laban's flock. Whenever the hardier animals came into heat, Yaakov would set up the rods in the watering troughs, so that the animals would see them and conceive in front of them. But he didn't set up the rods in front of the weaker animals. Thus, the more feeble were Lavan's and stronger Yaakov's. In this way, the man became very rich and had large flocks, along with the male and female slaves, camels, and donkeys.